viewers, after weeks and weeks of negotiations, i.e. begging and pleading, I finally got that raise. And trust me, it was no easy feat because the TymePop bosses like to keep costs to a minimum. So, now that I'm finally getting paid what I deserve as a talent, it's time to go to the 80s because today, we're gonna talk about He-Man and his creator, Roger Sweet, the man that changed how we play. Alright, imagine it's the year 1976 and you are Mattel CEO Ray Wagner. And during a mundane meeting, you're presented the opportunity to license a toy line for something called Star Wars. Now mind you, this is a strange upstart property. And before any of you start, I know a bunch of you guys are like,
what does this have to do with He-Man, though?
Well, a lot, actually. Because the aforementioned Mattel CEO decided against licensing the Star Wars brand. Mostly because he found the upfront fee of $750,000 to be really, really high. Now, don't get me wrong. I think if I was in his shoes, I probably would have done the same thing. Because that would equal $3,739,666.08 today. However, can you imagine having to face the Mattel board of directors when the original Star Wars trilogy went on to become a massive success? Poor Ray Wagner. He was only trying to be fiscally responsible only to get a big L for his trouble. But I digress. Because not only was Star Wars successful, the action figures he refused to make ended up generating millions by 1978. And that money was shared with Kenner Toys, a Cincinnati, Ohio-based toy company. And this is where I'm going to take you guys on an even deeper detour, because the man that helped make Star Wars merch what it is today was none other than conceptual designer Jim Swearigan. And as a Toy Industry Hall of Fame inductee, he once said his only career regret was
not asking George Lucas for a job when he had the chance.
I think you speak for all of us, Mr. Swearigan. Anyway, let's get back to Mattel and Kenner Toys roasting them with Star Wars action figures, shall we? Obviously, they were royally ticked off. But like any good company, Mattel knew that sulking wouldn't do anything, which is why they decided to fight fire with fire. So they launched brands of their own to counter Star Wars and Kenner Toys, starting with Micronauts Time Travelers. Alright. Kid Gallant. Robin and the Space Hoods. Oh, wow. Daredevil, Can He Do It? Pronounced, Can He Do It? Boo, I hate puns. And seriously, they had something called Battlestar Galactica, which gave me pause. Because wow. It's just too on the nose. I mean, just look for yourself. Yikes. They didn't just push the envelope with Battlestar Galactica. They set it on fire. I mean, can you really get that close to another franchise without repercussions? Wait, hold on a minute. I knew it. I knew if I dug deep enough, my suspicions would be proven correct. See? Some of you probably thought I was reaching or being petty, but the proof is in the pudding because according to many sources, Battlestar Galactica arrived with much fanfare, high ratings, and a lawsuit claiming they ripped off Star Wars. Yahoo.com. So, like me, George Lucas and 20th Century Fox saw enough similarities to sue Mattel in June of 1978, which was actually 3 months before Universal released Battlestar Galactica, Saga of a Star World. And here are some of the main points to basically just summarize what transpired. Number 1, 20th Century Fox highlighted more than 34 similarities between Battlestar Galactica and Lucas's Star Wars. Number 2, the case against Universal outlasted the Battlestar Galactica series because after initial interest, viewers kept tuning out as the season went on. Kinda like most Netflix shows, am I right? Oh, come on, you guys know I'm right. Number 3. Battlestar Galactica only had 24 episodes, with the final one airing in April of 1979. Number 4. Despite a California district court dismissing the lawsuit, it went to appeal. And fortunately for Lucas and 20th Century Fox, the U.S. Court of Appeals 9th Circuit reversed the lower court's decision, sending the case to trial. And number 5. Fox and Universal ended up settling out of court, which means Lucas got a tidy sum for his trouble. But before we move on, here's a bit of trivia, because apparently George Lucas was not surprised by the similarities between his brainchild and Battlestar Galactica, because Universal employed 2 of his former Star Wars collaborators, one being his Industrial Light and Magic co-founder, John Dykstra, and concept artist Ralph McQuarrie. But, as always, the conscience always wins, because in a 1984 biography titled Skywalking, The Life and Films of George Lucas, John Dykstra said, and I quote,
Yeah, the effects were the same, and maybe I feel guilty about that.
I swear, the toy industry has so much drama, I'm surprised no one's actually made a series about it. So now that you have the foundation of the tale, let's get to the hero of our story. Because, despite Mattel having things like Robin Hood in space and faux Star Wars, they still needed that must-have toy line. And this task was given to Roger Sweet, the lead designer from Mattel's preliminary design department. And being a brilliant man, he didn't let the pressure get to him. In fact, he decided to stick to his credo of keeping things simple, a belief he made mention of in his 2005 book titled Mastering the Universe, He-Man and the Rise and Fall of a Billion-Dollar Idea. So basically, Roger believes that all the best ideas make the job of the marketing department very easy. Which actually makes a lot of sense, because we've all heard the word marketability used whenever referencing successful people, places, or things. I'm looking at you, Will Ferrell. But enough about the amazing Mr. Ferrell, because it's time to look at the childhood of Roger Sweet. And though I could not find much about his formative years or his family, I did find enough sources that agreed he was born in Akron, Ohio on April 4th, 1935. I also discovered that his father was an art director for Firestone Tire and Rubber. So that basically means Roger grew up watching strongmen working long shifts at the rubber factories. And I'm sure that memory probably played some small part in inspiring He-Man. Anyway, it was Roger's father that actually encouraged him to pursue industrial design. So once high school was over, he attended Chicago's Institute of Design and Miami University in Oxford, Ohio, both of which he graduated from. And eventually his interest in motor-powered toys led him to a job with Mattel, which is located in El Segundo, California. One last bit of info about Roger Sweet before we move on, because it's said that before Mattel, he designed for companies like Rubbermaid, Hoover, and Procter & Gamble, where he is credited for designing the Downy and Scope packaging. He also designed the interior of the Boeing 747 jumbo jet airliner. Jeez, talk about overachiever. He is totally that sibling that your parents compare you to.
Your brother designs for Scope mouthwash. What have you done since graduating?
Now, let's find out how Roger Sweet delivered big time for Mattel, because as we already established, the company was getting wrecked by Kenner Toys and Star Wars, meaning they needed redemption badly. And remember, Roger also wanted to keep things simple, and since he already worked for a toy giant anyway, there was plenty of materials around at his disposal to make a prototype. So, he first grabbed a doll from one of their other brands called Big Jim. Note to self, I must do a video about this brand. Anyway, to make the prototype of his imposing action figure, Roger essentially formed clay onto the Big Jim doll to create musculature. And upon completion, it was posed as if in action so a cast could be made. So by late 1980, he presented Mattel with 3 versions of his concept: a soldier, a spaceman, and a barbarian. Obviously, history bears out that the executives went with the barbarian, to which Roger Sweet is quoted as saying,
"I simply explained that this was a powerful figure that could be taken anywhere and dropped into any context because he had a generic name, He-Man."
Now, to further the design, Roger Sweet credits Mark Taylor with not only the Templar cross and helmet, yes, he used to have one, but the harness He-Man wears as well. That being inspired by Mark's Torak character. Now, here's where things get a little bit more twisted in our tale, because there seems to be controversy surrounding this stage of He-Man. So for transparency's sake, it's important to note that aside from Mark Taylor being an artist and designer for Mattel, some say the prototype was inspired from his childhood, sprinkled in with a little bit of Cro-Magnon men and Vikings. So basically, we have 2 talented men with claim to a great idea. And since Mark Taylor and Ted Mayer both claim Roger Sweet's prototype was inspired by Mark's designs, you'll just have to do the research for yourself. But getting back to where we left off, because Mattel chose to roll with the barbarian, and now that they had that in mind, it was time to sell to the public. But that was easier said than done, because most toys were actually created after a successful movie or TV show. But with He-Man, Mattel was trying to essentially do the exact opposite. They were releasing a toy before anyone even knew what it was. So it was a gamble, but a gamble that paid off big time. Yet, as with everything in this saga, things went wrong before they went right. Because when Mattel executive Mark Ellis presented He-Man to Toys R Us buyers, he tried hooking them with a gimmick. That being that every figure would come with a mini comic, and there would be a complete series so that kids would keep buying and collecting. But instead of being impressed, the Toys R Us buyers basically roasted him. First, by saying they did not see any value in the so-called He-Man brand, and secondly, by stating that kids wouldn't even want to read their comics. So, to save the meeting, Mark Ellis told a little white lie, that being that there was a 1-hour special in the works. Hey, you can't fault the guy for trying to save the pitch. Anyway, because of these setbacks, He-Man didn't hit the shelves until 1982, and the cartoon followed afterward on September 5th, 1983. And honors for that went to Filmation, a company with a track record for animated success. But of course, there's yet another turn in this story, because as big of a hit as Masters of the Universe was, they were also hit in return. Yes, the 80s Karens, they showed up on the scene. And some were so offended by He-Man and friends, they actually got Congress to investigate. I swear, don't politicians have better things to do than to, watch cartoons for offensive material? Oh, but it didn't stop there. Because with the Karens failing to get satisfaction from Congress, the militant half of the offended squad emerged. And that, of course, is the Board Christian. And don't get me wrong, I'm not belittling their beliefs, because as a Christian myself, I totally get the belief system. However, I don't go around looking for benign things to protest. But don't take my word for it, just look at some of these clips from a series called Deception of a Generation.
Is there a well-organized plot, an insidious design right now to program and influence the minds of our children towards the occult and witchcraft?
Well, there's a cartoon called He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. Now, He-Man and the Masters of the Universe really broke the ground on this cartoon occultism. In fact, I was talking to one lady, and I've heard a number of experiences like this, but she said, my little boy was in the back seat of the car, and a radio preacher came on and said, our Lord God, the Master of the Universe. And her boy jumped from the back seat of the car and said, Mommy, God isn't Master of the Universe, He-Man is.
What? A little boy said that He-Man is the Master of the Universe?
Oh, even more so.
I believe the Antichrist is trying to program the minds of our youth, and he's getting his spell, his control on their minds.
Well, a preschool-age child will watch between 22 and 26 hours of television a week. At any time, day or night, preschoolers make up 22% of the television viewing audience.
Oh, I do not believe that dude at all, and his story about that little kid sounds like cap.
Skeletor, the master of the universe.
Moving on. As I said, there was no straight line to success for the He-Man property because the reason Mattel went to Filmation in the first place was due to Hanna-Barbera rejecting them. And for anyone who doesn't know who Filmation is, they're basically an animation studio that's behind such successes like The New Adventures of Superman, Fat Albert, The Superman Aquaman Hour of Adventure, and The Adventures of Batman. So as you can tell, there were no slouches when it came to animation. Now, as you recall, Mattel initially wanted to have a 1-hour special, but when they went to CBS, ABC, and NBC, they got turned down. So it was Filmation actually who suggested doing the episodic route, which is why season 1 consisted of 65 episodes, 30 minutes each, and basically this meant American homes were seeing He-Man 5 days a week. An idea that ended up working like gangbusters, because at the height of the cartoon's popularity, He-Man and the Masters of the Universe drew in 9 million viewers a day. Oh, but the Karens were not defeated yet. And since the Offended Squad is more persistent than any other supervillain ever created, in 1985, one Texas station, KTXS, was eventually forced to take the series off the air. I guess they were getting those Dale Gribble-style phone calls. But the solution only worked a short time because by appeasing the Karens, the station was quickly met by even angrier phone calls from the He-Man fans. So just as quickly as they pulled He-Man off the air, they resumed showing it again. And to appease the viewers they had offended by pulling it in the first place, KTXS arranged an appearance by a Mattel-endorsed actor. Unfortunately, after the guy was swarmed by over 8,000 rabid fans, the event was shut down.
He-Man left early because we had become very concerned about the safety of the children, KTXS owner S.M. Moore told Lethbridge Herald.
Obviously, the criticism continued, and some even accused Filmation of putting out a glorified commercial at Mattel's behest. But despite what many people believed, the animation studio did have some standards, because when Mattel pitched artist Lou Scheimer on a new attack vehicle prototype, he hit the pause button. Because, oh my god, this is so funny. The vehicle pummeled opponents, so Mattel wanted to call it the Ball Buster. Oh my god, I love Mattel. I need a job there so I can troll executives too. Anyway, as I said, Lou Scheimer told Mattel that he would never animate anything called the Ball Buster. So in the end, Mattel was forced to change the name to the Bastrosaurus. Now let's get to my favorite part, the money. Because within 2.5 years, $70 million were sold worldwide, with the US representing 55 million of that number. So according to Mattel marketing director David Kapper, that meant there were $1.7 for every American under the age of 9. Which is insane considering how much the brand cost, because Battle Armor He-Man went for $4.99, which in today's prices would be $14.21. And as for Castle Grayskull, that came with a hefty price tag of $27.99, which is $79.73 today. Wow, you have to give some credit to some parents. Now you see why they snap whenever you ask for a new toy. Anyway, Mattel's joyride didn't last for very long, because with all their achievements with the He-Man brand, by the time 1987 rolled around, they were stuck. Mostly because they made a critical error of oversaturating the market, a tactic that they employed to cover losses from other failed brands such as Intellivision. So as more Masters of the Universe toys rolled out, retailers had little choice but to refuse them. And they did it for good reason, because not only was old stock taking up shelf space, parental support had totally burned out. After all, since the Masters of the Universe collections seemed never ending, they were just simply tired of forking out the cash. This meant that after reaching sales of over 400 million in 1986, that number tanked to 7 million in 1987. That's equal to making 1.3 billion in sales today, and plummeting to $18,120,547.45. Basically, within a 5-year span, Mattel experienced a 98.25% decrease in sales. That's actually pretty crazy considering that Roger Sweet said at one time, sales were once even estimated to be at over $2 billion. But if you truly look at the situation from the outside, you can see where the burnout made sense, because Mattel rolled out everything under the sun, from Halloween costumes, messenger bags, drinking glasses, art smocks, backpacks, blankets, cake toppers, candy bars, cassette players, party supplies, pins, popsicles, sleeping bags, watches, and a whole lot more. But the funniest cash grab has to be one particular comic I came across, because for some odd reason, DC Comics decided that Superman needed a crossover with He-Man. Oh, but it gets even weirder, because on the cover, they have the funniest dialogue box by Superman.
As long as Skeletor magically controls me, I must attack He-Man, and that means I could die.
Wait, what? Fine, we know He-Man is powerful. Yes, we get it. He's very powerful, but like, work with me here. You are Superman. You're an alien with abnormal strength, speed, and heat vision. Just laser him from the sky. Seriously? Who are we fooling with this cover? Like, I need a break. Okay, I'm back. Moving on, let's get to the main attractions, shall we? Because as you know, He-Man had a movie, and it was as popular as the Garbage Pail Kids movie. Because for some reason, they decided to change much of the lore for the big screen, which explains why the August 7th, 1987 release of Masters of the Universe was such a huge disappointment. And probably that's why it grossed only $17 million, despite being budgeted at $22 million, which is a loss of 29.4%. But as I said earlier, expectations were initially high, with many anticipating the spectacle of Eternia being brought to life. However, what they got instead was Earth. Yes, I said Earth. Along with Dolph Lundgren's wooden acting, Skeletor's plaster mask,
Skeletor.
and 2 Californian teenagers no one asked for. And to add a cherry to this weird sundae, the plot and theme was a grab bag of other properties, which is why the script was roasted as being a combination of Conan the Barbarian and Star Wars. Oh god, not the Star Wars obsession again. I thought we got this out of our system with Battlestar Galactica. Guess not, because there's like literal stormtroopers in this movie and lasers. Even Mattel dunked on the film, because upon seeing a rough cut, executive Paul Cleveland is quoted as saying,
I said it's okay if He-Man has a little bit of an accent, but you gotta be able to understand him.
But that casting aside, that wasn't the only thing haunting this project, because by telling the director that He-Man could not kill anyone or anything, Mattel made it a snooze fest, which is probably why the merchandising sales tanked even harder after the film's release. And even now, Masters of the Universe sits at 5.3 out of 10 on IMDb, 3.3 out of 5 on Google, and a 16% on Rotten Tomatoes. Before I move on, I have a really quick fun fact for you guys. Despite He-Man being popular with boys, according to the show's executive producer, Lou Scheimer, 30% of the viewers were girls, which is probably why She-Ra was created and premiered on September 2nd, 1985. The series was basically about He-Man's twin sister, and they aired 93 episodes over 2 seasons, with the last episode ending in 1987. As for He-Man himself, it only lasted 2 seasons, with 130 episodes total. Yet, it still managed to spawn a great deal of other projects, because to date, there has been 6 animated television shows, each with their own line of toys, 49 mini-comics, 11 She-Ra mini-comics, 4 He-Man New Adventure comics, a landmark storybook, 2 feature films, 1 live, 1 animated, newspaper comic strips, 7 video games, and a whole lot more. No, I'm not gonna cover that. I refuse to cover that. I suppose it's safe to say that the Masters of the Universe are here to stay. And with Mattel being one of the global leaders in designing, manufacturing, and marketing of toy products, the possibilities are endless, especially since the company is currently valued at $8.5 billion. As for their former adversary, Kenner Toys, they were shut down by parent company Hasbro in 2000. Wait, Hasbro has entered the chat? You see? This is why I said they need a drama series about the toy industry. Anyway, as for our friend Roger Sweet, though retired, the 87-year-old attends festivals and cons where he signs merchandise for He-Man fans as much as he can. As for artist and toy designer Mark Taylor, unfortunately his family confirmed his passing in late 2021 at age 80. However, the indelible mark he left with contributions to franchises like He-Man and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles will make sure that his spirit lives on forever. Finally, we come to the franchise itself, and according to IMDb, Netflix has a live-action Masters of the Universe in pre-production, with the part of He-Man going to Kyle Allen as of January 2022. So expect the release of 2024. However, this is Netflix, so... Oh, come on, guys, come on! Don't boo me, I'm just saying. You know I'm right. So while you're waiting for the movie to come out, you can still rep He-Man with action figures, bag clips, sculptures, socks, pop figures, Halloween costumes, hoodies, Legos, life-size busts, snapbacks, ugly Christmas sweaters, and much, much more. And those licensed needs can be met by Mattel, 80s Tees, Amazon, Sideshow Collectibles, superhero stuff, and the Societies, to name a few. So before we get out of here, I've always wanted to say this, I've always thought that He-Man was 1 part Carlton Banks and 1 part Ultimate Warrior. Anyway, our journey has come to an end, but please join me next time when we try to figure out how and why Teddy Ruxpin came to be. And as always, thanks for watching, Poppers. See you next time!